Gurave Gaur Chandraya Radhikaya Tadari Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My Dandavat Pranam devotees. So today, at the request of some devotees who wrote asking for a discussion on the nature of what is aparad, I'm doing a very short, I always say that, but sincerely here, because my services are calling and I don't want to get further behind in the services to do this. And at the same time, I didn't want to try to wait till tomorrow because it's also a busy day. So a very short sort of discussion on what is the nature of aparad. And as the title suggests, it is the greatest danger, and it is in many cases lurking in plain sight. So what is meant by that is that many devotees for many years recited the 10 offenses to the holy name and sort of became familiar with them. But many devotees are not really familiar with the first and greatest offense, which is Vaishnava Aparad. The 10 offenses to Harinam, which actually check one's ability to receive the efficacy of Harinam, are stated in the Padma Puran. And the very first one of those offenses is Satam Ninda Namna Param Aparadam Vitanute Yata Kyatim Yatam Katam Ush Ashahate Tutat Vigraham. So I looked up this verse some years ago and looked at the Sanskrit, and the way that it's written is very unique because it's posing a question actually. How is it possible, basically, that if one has done satam nindam, which means to have offended a devotee, then as far as nam is concerned, how is it possible that one can essentially receive the nature of nam, or that one can have genuine association with nam if such a offense has been committed? Aparadam vitanute yata kyatim. So he's asking the question, how is it possible that one can have adequate association with Sri Harinam if one has done satam ninda? So then the question is, what is satam nindam? Because in the very first aparad regarding chanting Harinam, and Harinam is the pradhan practice. Pradhan means the root practice of bhakti, is chanting Harinam. Savasestam Taramadje Savasestam Nama Kirtan. So among all the 64 angas which are distilled to 9, which are distilled to 5, the essential practice is Harinam. Harinam has been described Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Ras Vigraha Purnasulo Nityamukto Abhinatvam Nama Namyo. Also Namnam Akri Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktis. Mahaprabhu himself is declaring Shishashtakam in the second slok that this Harinam has all efficacy, all power to give bhakti. And that bhakti is described in the verse I quoted earlier, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. This Nam is the very life of transcendental rasa or bhakti rasa. So if a person has created aparad or offense to a Vaishnav, then the shlok here in Padma Puran is declaring what is the possibility to have association with Nam and therefore receive the efficacy of Nam. So I want to read some other quotes regarding aparad. And first, I didn't take this down, but I'll just say it by memory. But there are 6 ways in which one can offend a Vaishnava. So it's mentioned, Hanti Nindanti Vai Dveshti Vaishnavam Nabhinandati Krujate No Hashanam Darshane Patranani Sat. So it mentions that if one physically harms a Vaishnava, or if one Nindanti criticizes, blasphemies with malice a Vaishnava, Hanti Nindanti Vai Dveshti, if one maintains any kind of animosity or envy towards a Vaishnava, Vaishnavam Nabhinandati, to fail to welcome a Vaishnava. So this is especially very interesting because in an atmosphere where we become, according to Bhakti Vinod Thakur, victims of one of the greatest enemies of the practice of bhakti, which is sectarianism, there is a habit of, without knowing the Vaishnavata of a particular Vaishnava, creating barriers of exclusion. If you do that, it falls into this category of Vaishnavam Nabhinandati, to fail to welcome a Vaishnava. How do you welcome a Vaishnava? A Vaishnava is welcomed by common etiquette, that one should come in, offer a seat, offer at least a water and some prasad. These are the general etiquettes. But also, with a Vaishnava, there's special etiquettes. And one of those special etiquettes, it should be that one should offer the Vaishnava a chance to glorify Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava. Because a Vaishnava, they have no interest in just eating, sleeping, and other sort of things. So to invite a Vaishnava to simply eat or sleep or something like that, this is not meeting the criteria of welcoming a Vaishnava. When a Vaishnava comes to one's home, one's temple, in one's association in any way, form, or fashion, then the common etiquette should be offered. Have a seat, have something to drink, an offering of prasad, offering to rest, so forth, so on. But more specifically, the Vaishnava should be offered the opportunity to glorify Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava, because any Vaishnava's life is those things, Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava. So by especially stifling the ability of a devotee to offer glorification of Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava, it becomes aparad of not adequately welcoming a Vaishnava. So I'm making a clear point here. Then, krutyate, to become angry towards a Vaishnava. No harshanam darshane, or to be unhappy to see a Vaishnava. All of these aparads, when you analyze them, they are born from material conceptions. Right? It means from a sense of sectarianism itself is born from material conception of false egoism, because generally false egoism and upadis mean particular material designations, they go together. So the false ego nourishes the idea, I belong to this group, they belong to that group, they are initiated by this guru, I'm initiated by this guru, and so forth and so on. And these kind of alliances, they are part of the projection of false ego. And because they're part of the projection of false egoism, then they open the portal to various kinds of Vaishnava aparad, especially like the ones I mentioned, because they're most easily done. Like just simply failing to welcome a Vaishnava according to actual Vaishnava standard. Being unhappy to see a Vaishnava, because I consider that Vaishnava to belong to this group or that group. And subtly maintaining dveshti means any envy, duplicity, any contrary mood towards a Vaishnava. All of these things constitute aparad and pattanani sat. They can cause fall down. One of the things that's also very dangerous is that sometimes the nature of fall down is imperceptible. Just like pride itself, Raghunath Das Goswami in his Manasiksha, he mentions Pratishta asha drashta swapachiri ridi a ramani menatet katam sadhu premas prasati suchihir nanu manaha. So he's mentioning that pratishta asha, or the desire, subtle or gross, for prestige, which is essentially pride, pratishta asta drasht. The word drasht means very audacious, very bold. Pratishta asta drashta swapacha ramani. Like a dog eating outcast prostitute, Meiriri Natet, who's dancing in the heart. So the nature of the way that Raghunath Das Goswami has written this is, it should be impossible for a low-class dog-eating prostitute to dance in your presence and you not recognize that this is kusanga, means bad association. You understand? But pride is of such a nature that boldly it does this and it's not recognized. So this is the extreme danger of pride. And pride comes from various kinds of abhiman. I'm a great kirtaniya abhiman. I am a great scholar abhiman. I'm a great pracharaka, means it's a person who speaks harikatha, prachar. I'm a great sevak of Thakurji in terms of being pujari. So all kinds of abhiman, which are infused with the pride, especially the pride of kartata. I am the doer. I am a great speaker. I am a great kirtaniya. I am a great pujari. I am a great cook. When there's a sense that I am the doer, it does not recognize that actually everything in bhakti is carried out by the influence of bhakti shakti coming in Guru Parampara. Very interesting story. Once my Guru Pada Padma, we had a festival in North Carolina, but he was seeing his doctors in Houston and was unable to attend the festival. So the festival was going on very nicely. Many Srila Prabhupada's disciples, others, they were speaking and just speaking very nicely. And I called Gurudev to give him the report, what was going on. And Gurudev says, how is everything going? Then he says, how is Harikatha going? And I said, oh Gurudev, it's very nice. This Maharaj spoke very nicely. This Mataji spoke very nicely. This Prabhu spoke very nicely. So Gurudev said, oh, who's speaking? So then I started to reiterate the names that I had mentioned, thinking perhaps Gurudev had not heard me clearly. Then Gurudev repeated, no, who is speaking? So I actually took the phone, and there was another devotee in the room with me, and I put the phone on speaker. And I said, well, Gurudev, I reiterated those names. And Gurudev said, no, I am speaking. Instead, he wanted to make the point that we should not think that we are the speakers or we are the doers, but that the ability to transmit Harikatha comes in parampara, and a person trying to serve Harikatha becomes the portal or becomes the recipient of the creep of Guru Parampara, Mahaprabhu and Shri Radha Krishna, to speak their glories. And in this way, if a person constantly thinks like this, no pratishta asha or desire for pride should arise in relation to doing any kind of seva. But when such pride is there, and the abhiman related to this kind of pride is there, it is also the most fertile position in which aparad can become manifest. Because a person thinks that I am the doer, I'm controlling this particular place, and therefore will disregard proper Vaishnava etiquette, and I'll say who can speak and who cannot speak. You understand? I also will set up maybe rules and regulations that don't acknowledge Vaishnavas according to their Vaishnavata, but put them in certain categories. I want to read also from Padma Puran, and it's often quoted, one verse, and I'll read the whole verse, because normally we do not quote the whole verse, but I'll read the whole verse. Arache Vishnu Shilide Guru Shu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Budhi. So this is an important one, and I'll come back to it. Vishnu va Vaishnavanam Kali Mala Matane Paratyete Ambu Budhi Shri Vishnu Namni Mantre Shakala Koshala Hi Shabde Samanya Budhi Vishnu Sava Eshwari Thati Tarasamadi Yashava Narakasaha. So he's saying that no one should consider the deity in the temple to be made of stone or wood, nor should one consider the spiritual master to be an ordinary man. What somehow or another, there's been, I don't know, some upsurge of discussions around these kind of things, that Guru, because of different people's experiences, they're trying to rationalize certain things regarding Guru Tattva. And they're saying there's a human side to Guru, and then there's a spiritual side to Guru and such things. But actually, according to Sastra, and it's reiterated here, we should always see Shri Guru in the absolute position. If the person proves they're not in the absolute position, then that's a different story. But if we've accepted someone as Guru, then the vision of any disciple is my Guru Dev is in the absolute position in the form of two Leelas. In Gaur Leela, he's manifest in the particular form I see, with the particular set of activities that I see. And beyond that, or in addition to that is a better phrasing, in Krishna Leela he also has his Swarup. Right? So, then it says, one should not consider Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste or creed. So this also means you should not consider a Vaishnava according to any jati means a category. That this Vaishnava is in the category of this group or that group, or is in the category of that particular Sangha or this particular Sangha. So we should not consider Vaishnavas according to these things, but they should be considered according to their Vaishnavata, their individual qualities. I had a situation in which one devotee had given me some rationale regarding speaking on a particular forum, because since the time of the pandemic, I'm still traveling and traveling more now, and also obviously I like in-person ability to serve Hari Katha and have the association of devotees. But obviously from the time of the pandemic, so many services had to be adjusted, so I developed so many online classes, and even this forum of answering questions online began from the time of the pandemic, when I was receiving so many questions and I was just overwhelmed with the ability to type answers. So I first began to speak answers on the messenger, and then some devotee said, it's a good thing if you could speak it on Facebook Live, because that way it will reach more people, and secondly, it'll give other people a chance to contribute to the conversation. I thought that was very good, as many senior devotees would contribute and give correction if necessary, and so forth and so on. So during that time, so many excuse me, online activities regarding serving Hari Katha were developed. So I expanded that by speaking on different forums, and it was not Sangha specific. It was whomever invited me, or if I reached out to a particular Sangha, I'd like to share Hari Katha there or something. Anyway, I was supposed to speak on one forum, and I'm not going to go into details here, but in the long story short, that particular forum administrator got back to me. And I'm going to give one detail because it's pretty pertinent to the whole story. It has happened in other situations, online situations, but this particular one was particularly, I would say, problematic because of my relationship to the nature of that particular Sangha. So that problematic here meaning, I mentioned on some forums many times before that I had the great mercy of Mahaprabhu, Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Pada Padma, to do seva in Africa, to pioneer opening temples in Africa starting in 1979. And so I have to mention this forum was related to that, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So it had some special kind of meaning in the sense that these are devotees. Well, I don't know. Sometimes this happens, Prabhuji. One devotee is just writing me to tell me that the sound is a little bit distorted a little bit. I tried to move the iPad just now to hope that'll make it a little bit better, but sometimes this happens with this iPad. I don't know why. But anyway, hopefully this is a little bit better. But anyway, I had done service in this particular community for many, many years, obviously. So the rationale that was given for not scheduling a class was, one, there was a conflict of a scheduling, which I thought, okay, that could happen. But then later there was a discussion about the fact that some devotees had come together with an idea that perhaps it was not the most ideal thing to speak because they had had a previously bad experience with another devotee. So I mentioned to the administrator that really every devotee should be looked at individually, because if we operated really on that basis, that, well, I had a very bad experience with another devotee whom we also related to your particular sangha or grouping, then what would be the case within your own group where there also may have been problems? Would you then say that having experienced problems within our own grouping, we therefore can't have anybody speak even from our own grouping? Then nobody would be giving Harikatha, right? So we always make the assessment of Vaishnavas who are favorable to speak or unfavorable for speaking according to their Vaishnavata. If a devotee is blasphemous, critical, if a devotee speaks apasiddhanta, if a devotee speaks outside the jurisdiction of our Guru Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, etc., there are valid reasons why having them speak would not be favorable. But putting people into categories and associating entire groups of people with a category and making decisions on that basis falls into this category mentioned here of Vaishnavas being Jati Bhuri, arranging them according to some material category. So in the long run, it mentions many other things here. It says, one should not consider Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste creed. I just read that. We should not consider Chanamrita or the Ganga to be like ordinary water, nor should we consider Hare Krishna mantra to be like material sound vibration, which includes Hare Katha, etc., because all of them are expansions of Krishna. And it mentions here that Yasha, regarding these things, Van Naraki Saha. A person who thinks like this is, Naraki means a resident of hell. So, obviously this is a very severe statement, but the mentality is like that. Especially because it's such a fertile ground for aparad. Also, what is the meaning of aparad? Apagata iti aparada radha, apagata radha iti aparad. Apagata radha iti aparad. The definition of the word aparad is apagata radha. So it means going against. Radha means aradhana. Radha means directly Radharani, but it also means aradhana. It means the principle of worship in pure love. Apagata, to go opposite of that, iti aparad is called aparad. So certainly to offend Vaishnavas in any of the ways I've mentioned, it goes against the flow of worship in bhakti. So I want to read one other verse from one of the songs of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I believe Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Anyway, Harishtane aparade tare harinam, tomashtane aparade nahiko edan. It says that even when one commits offenses to Harinam, by the continual chanting of Harinam, one can become freed from those offenses, because Harinam has this power. Namnam akri bahuda nija sarva shaktis. Harinam has this power. Also, even if a person suffers from Vishai means attachment to sense enjoyment, because of all of our previous material impressions from time without any beginning, then the samskars of those impressions are still being eradicated. They're eradicated by the bhakti samskars from one life to another. Right? Praktakana aduni chasti yasat bhakti vasana. So the bhakti vasana, or the bhakti samskars, they enter the heart and they displace the material samskars. This is the meaning in Bhagavad Gita of the verse, Raso Rajam Raso Piyasha Param Drishva Nivartate. By the superiority of Param Drishva, the superiority of the taste in bhakti, it displaces Jadras, means material enjoyment. So if one continues the chant, then one gradually will become completely free from any attachment to mundane sense enjoyment, so forth and so on. And if in the course of chanting, in immaturity, there's some aparads, the harinam, they can be alleviated. But the first aparad in harinam, which is Vaishnav Ninda, that is saying here in this bhajan, there is no remedy for that. So the meaning here is that there's no remedy you can do yourself. You will have to get the creeper of that Vaishnav whom you've offended in order to be alleviated from that problematic results of those kind of offenses. And what kind of problematic results would there be? Yadi Vaishnav aparat utte hoti mata upari Vaishindi tarasukti yaya upara yaya pata. So this is mentioned obviously in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Sanatan Siksha. Mahaprabhu is giving instructions of how to perform bhakti, and he says one has to be very careful to protect the creeper of bhakti against what's called upasakas, means weeds that grow along with the creeper of bhakti, right? Because from all of our material impressions, when we, as Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami, Malikana se bija ropan shravanam kirtane kariye shekar, that you should plant the seed of bhakti and water it by hearing and chanting. But when we do hearing and chanting, the potency of that hearing and chanting, if we're not careful, will also water the weeds of our material samskars. You understand? So that's why we always have to chant under anugatya, chant with concentration, chant with proper mindset, all these things to protect the creeper of bhakti and take away the weeds that can choke it out. But he says especially one thing, which he compares to a mad elephant entering a garden, is Vaishnava aparad. Upari Vaichindi means it uproots the creeper of bhakti, the bhakti lata, and destroys it. So sometimes it's imperceptible, as I mentioned I think earlier, that a person commits an aparad, but they don't see any so-called punishment coming from that aparad. But the greatest result of negativity that takes place in the life of someone who commits aparad is they don't get bhakti. More than that, they get what is called there's two things. There's kripa, which is the actual result of bhakti, and then there's, Gaur Govind Maharaj used to always say, and there's cheating. You understand? There's kripa and there's cheating. So bhakti shakti also is very tricky. You understand? If bhakti shakti observes that there's aparad, or the shadow aparad, or the shadow of aparad, or the smell of aparad in your heart, bhakti will not enter there. So bhakti will trick you because you'll still be doing chanting, serving, doing various things, and it seems like it's bhakti. But bhakti actually, shakti, the actual potency of bhakti, won't enter there. Kripa and vanchana. Vanchana means cheating. So a person will think, yes, I'm practicing bhakti, but actually bhakti shakti is not entering there. Raghunath Das Goswami mentioned this, Katam sadhu premas prasati suchihe nanu mana. How can pure bhakti enter a heart which is contaminated by pride? Pride is the seat of committing aparad. I explained earlier. So, it is such an important topic because it is so easy to fall into a situation in which you commit an aparad. Right? In general, overall, we should try to avoid being critical of Vaishnavas. Just outright overall. Right? We should concentrate on doing bhajan life where we observe any very egregious activity that goes on in the community that victimizes others. We should certainly step forward to deal with those things appropriately. But in general, we should not have a habit of trying to criticize Vaishnavas. Oh, this Vaishnava is like that, that Vaishnava is like this. We should stay very fixed in our own bhajan in terms of trying to secure, grow, perfect our own bhajan. You understand? And take stock of our own inadequacies, our own lacking, and try to improve under anugatya of any bona fide sadhu guru. You understand? So, but certainly, one should not knowingly, and even if it's unknowingly, you should become very clear. Like another thing that I've seen is that sometimes when, like I especially mentioned in Vaishnavam Nabhinandati, the fail to welcome a Vaishnava, especially to do Harikatha or something, someone will always be deputed to give the message. And I said, well, I talked to the board, or I talked to the seniors, or I talked to the administration, and they said. Actually, you should always say, you know, very humbly speaking, I am not sure because I don't want to commit any aparad. Mataji, Prabhuji, Maharaj, is it possible for you to talk to them? You understand? Is it possible for you to talk to them? Because if it is something that that person who's in a position of seniority genuinely feels is inappropriate, they should come forward and speak to the person involved and make clear why and so forth and so on. If you depute that duty to someone, especially a younger devotee, you're doing great damage to the creeper of that young Vaishnava because they don't know. And they may be following something on the basis of something told by a senior without being clear on why, and then they become implicated in that aparad. Now, some people say, well, that's part of their karmic pattern, their karmic portfolio that they would become, but still, we have to speak to it, that we want to try to avoid it happening. So I would say that if you are in a position, like, if anyone approaches me to ask, Mukunda Prabhu, one Vaishnava is visiting, what do you think about their speaking? My always initial statement is, well, who is the Vaishnava? And if there's any way to research that Vaishnava, you can research, have they spoken any blasphemy? Are they critical? Have they spoken apasiddhanta? Do they have any animosity towards our Guru Parampara? Etc., etc. And if not, yes, that Vaishnava could speak. And even if some philosophical point comes up that is questionable, this is why senior devotees are there. They can correct. My Guru Padma would always do like this. If any Vaishnava came, he would ask that Vaishnava, oh, please, welcome, have a seat, so forth, so on. And he would actually have them have a seat on the dais, like where he was sitting, sit up on the stage here, and then he would say, oh, would you speak any Harikatha? Or sing any bhajan, right? Because Gurudev was always anxious to show how etiquette should be. You understand? And then if something was said that had some philosophical questionability, if that's a word, Gurudev would then correct it. At the end, he would humbly and sweetly correct what was said by that Vaishnava. You understand? And he would help that Vaishnava as well. You understand? So, like this, we should try to observe proper Vaishnava etiquette and proper Vaishnava standard, and try to stay very far away from even the potential of committing aparad. And especially now with social media, it's very easy to commit aparad. I don't know how many times I've passed on social media just outright criticism and this and that of devotees and missions and so forth and so on. So it is the greatest danger. Of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also mentioned, and he compared it in Krishna Samhita to the forest fire that Krishna put out, that one of the greatest dangers in the Vaishnava Mandal is sectarianism. So we especially can get away from the mood of sectarianism by observing Vaishnavas according to their Vaishnavata, and not trying to categorize Vaishnavas into particular groupings. You understand? A Vaishnava should be seen by their Vaishnavata. Because whatever Sangha a person is in, right, they could be Vaishnava or not in behavior. And that's what should be analyzed. You understand? Alright, like I mentioned, I have so many services also to do. So Prabhuji, hopefully this was somewhat helpful. It was spontaneous also. So I just took a few references that I read from. But actually, dealing with aparad and the severity of aparad could be a whole class and very expanded. So, but just I wanted to satisfy your desire to have me speak on it. I'm sure you understood because you didn't have a question about it. You just asked me if I'd speak about it on this forum. And certainly, Prabhu, if you'd like to also contribute anything in the comments, it would also be helpful. Okay. All right, my Dandavat Pranam, Dandavat to the devotees who are on directly listening. Jai. Vanchakalpatarubhischa kripa sindhuvevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai. Hare Krishna. Radhe Radhe.